And then, the other properties, aside from Willingham, that tree, what we call the T property, has a couple of trees, but it's not like
I think it's
Willingham.
mostly grass.
Mostly grass. But, and the Willingham parcel is, you know, it's in a gateway into our city, and
Yeah, that all.
and I think it, you know, so I actually have someone I'm waiting on now to give me a price on the initial cleanup of it. And then as we talk to people about this contract, we can see if they're interested in that as a, you know, that would be a separate project, but, because this is the ongoing contract, but. And I don't know if you guys have someone we want to ask. We can post it out for bid, but I don't know if people will read the website and see that.
You could post it up, and, cities now can list on the state website, posting for bid. If we get you some big companies, once you come in and have the insurance requirements
Right.
that you need, and probably because of lower overhead, can come in and do it cheaper.
Yeah,
I think to keep the questions down, you need to go ahead and post it out.
yeah, I think we should post it, but,
Yeah.
because but we need to find out what those insurance requirements
Yeah, you can,
are, so we can put that in the bid post.
What does B3 mean?
B3. B as in boy?
etching were designed by personnel, were designated by personnel selected by the authority, or is needed in the distinct discretion of the contractor.
Well, I guess if someone on the authority thought it needed edging, then you could direct him to.
But it's at his
do so.
discretion, so if he says no, then
Or as needed in his discretion, right.
So that's a waste of ink right there.
It should say edging anywhere grass meets.
put weed eating and edging maybe in number 2.
Personally, I think edging it makes a huge difference.
Yes,
I've brought
it
that
does.
up several
Yes, it
times
does.
to our city managers in the past for our exit ramps. I know, I'm a little off the subject here, but I know the ramp I get off at the office every day, there are no flowers, no trees, but it looks so nice because the grass is cut and it's edged at the curb. Always edged at the curb. None of that growing over, spilling over into the street, like, you know, and it makes a huge difference. No landscaping or anything, just it's grass and it's edged and it just looks neat.
It should say just as edging anywhere grass meets an impervious surface.
So I think that makes a big difference in the appearance.
We can just say edging as directed by
The edges of a
development
lot of that
authority.
property are in bad shape, though. Some of it's got old concrete with grass grown over it, so it could be difficult to get it looking great.
And maybe
without some
that's
work.
part of the initial cleanup
Yeah.
of the property.
You
that
pay
we
for
get
officer
it-
cleanup.
we
Probably
get it-
need to clearly define the cleanup.
Right, that we get that done, you know, the trees that are down, all the cleanup around all the
Cause
the
you know, one
trees.
side has
get
old
that-
residential wall before it gets to the sidewalk.
Right,
But then the other side has
the
no
Willingham
sidewalk.
side has no
Nothing.
sidewalk, has nothing,
And it
just a bank, and from
And I
time to time,
think
the
it has
city
the
cleans
old
that, and
stone
sometimes they don't.
Curbing, the granite curbing that was there years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
On the Willingham side.
Maybe it's gone or
it's
been
just-
covered
yeah,
up.
just-
Never walked up there in that.
When you put this out for bid, you're gonna have someone take these people and show them these properties, because there are no addresses on most of these streets. So, before we put it out for bid, let's designate someone who would be available to do that, and
Maybe a map.
walk the property, the Willingham property, and decide exactly what you want done for the cleanup and the cleanup going forward.
Right,
And the edging, put that in there on, I don't know that you could edge Willingham, but these other properties you might be able to.
Yeah, you probably
So
could,
just
yeah.
edging at the discretion of the, development authority, not the discretion of the
Of the
contractor.
contractor.
Well, even on Willingham,
I think you can
edging is one
edge,
thing, but if you weed eat it good, you get
Mhm.
pretty close.
I think you can do, you should be able to do that along Colville and along where there's sidewalk. The Willingham side is a bank,
Well, you know,
And,
part of Colville too has all of that old concrete. That's in there, there's really no edge.
yeah. But, I mean, there's a place where the grass ends and the road starts. So we could probably take a weed eater and just kind of go along that edge. But the Willingham side is a bank, and nothing gets done with that, except on occasion, maybe once a year, the city comes through and cuts along that bank. So we'd have to decide, do we want to maintain that going forward? We haven't in the past, or we just leave that as a bank, and whenever the city comes through to clear it.
What's on that bank, is it grass or?
No, it is not grass, it's weeds and
It's
trees and
steep.
undergrowth, and, yeah, it's pretty steep. It's not something you'd ride a mower on.
Somebody with
It's about
chemical-
5 or 6 feet high too in places.
Somebody
That's
with
pretty
chemical
high.
application
Straight
license and
down.
just round, get somebody with an application license and round up the heck out of it. Kill it. Except for the trees.
I
I don't know
don't
about
wanna get
that.
too carried away with Roundup.
I don't know about
Yeah,
that.
you kill all
because
those butterflies.
A lot of that
and
stuff
worms
is
and all
growing
that
there,
other
it's
stuff,
keeping the
too.
rest of that bank in.
Yeah,
Okay.
from
I don't know
washing
what it
out,
was.
yeah, from
Why not
washing
just,
out.
why not just leave it wild and
I think you're right.
wildlife
Leave it
habitat?
wild.
Selective
wildlife
pruning,
Yeah.
Selective pruning.
Yeah, I mean, really, you know, but
it's what I've always
I,
done.
I think, I mean, basically, it functions like it, I mean, just fine like it
There's
is.
nothing
I mean,
wrong with
it's,
wild.
No, it's not.
there's no sidewalk there, no one's walking over there, or, you know, that kind of thing, so. Okay, so, we definitely need to have what we want for the cleanup, what that entails, in order to get pricing on it, obviously. And,
Well,
And then the monthly.
who can walk that and determine what needs to be done, Richard and John? Do y'all have any ideas?
Who
We
wants
can-
to?
We can walk it, take pictures and send the pictures to everybody with our suggestions.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that, and then we all look at it and say,
We can
yeah,
all
let's do
agree
that or
at the
not.
next meeting or whatever.
If you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
We can do that.
I'll walk it with you.
All right,
We're gonna be down there we both gotta be at work at 6, can you make it by 5:30?
At night?
In the morning?
We'll see.
There'll be
He
guard
thinks I'm
photographs.
kidding.
What time do you get done with work?
I'm on the job right now.
Conflict
well,
of
you can
interest?
go over there right now.
Moving right along. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, all right, so if you guys, so that sounds like a plan, if you guys can work that out.
Can't do it tomorrow, I've got too busy a day. Probably next Tuesday be the best for me. What time do you get off?
I can be off, well, I can come over, I work at Delta, I can come over. Kinda like you, I'm always on. So if I need to come over for 10 minutes, it's not a problem. I go back to the office
What's
after
good
that.
for you, let's put it that way.
5:36, 6:30.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Okay.
that'll work.
We can do that, yeah.
All right.
5:30.
All right, we got
5:30.
that.
We'll meet at Willingham.
So, if you guys are doing that, looking at the cleanup, and then maybe make a list of what you feel like monthly should be done. Now, we kind of talked about it, grass and trimming around the
Yeah.
trees.
Once you
And
get it
maybe-
trimmed, the weed eating and all should be done every cut.
Absolutely.
That's the problem, it hasn't been done.
Well, and the limbs and debris need to be, you know, we can tell the contractor, a certain place they need to pull it to the street.
We'll
in the
define that
city,
place and
right.
then get with
And
Lee to make sure,
to
or
pick it up.
Smitty, to make sure they know where we're gonna put it.
Because it does, the trees and limbs don't need to be just thrown back up next to a tree.
No,
and left.
that's what's happening now.
So, okay. Anything else on that? And then we'll find out about the insurance, the city's insurance requirements. All right? Well, thank y'all for taking that homework.
Yes, thank you very much.
But you get my bill on that one. I'll buy you up there.
Not
All
gonna
right.
cover it.
Okay, next item on our agenda is economic development update. David, do you have anything for us?
Anything in particular, I don't
Anything
think. So,
I know.
Expecting something big.
still working on something big, so,
All right,
trying to find all options at the moment on all that.
all right. Public comment.
I have one.
Okay, George?
I think it's okay in this one. In the last meeting, Mr. Murray was wondering how things, Brendan said that things can get into a bond if they're illegal, and you had questions about that. So I'm gonna try and explain that to you from a layman's point of view.
Start over again, I couldn't.
The last time we were at the meeting, you were talking about how things get into a bonded validation, and
I don't think I brought that up.
didn't you?
No.
And Brendan was explaining how that happens even if they may be quote-unquote illegal.
The only thing I asked Brendan was, did he have any case law to support his position?
I can hear you.
Any case law to support his position? That's the only question I had.
Well, okay. Here's from a layman's point of view. What happens at a bond hearing is that you think of a bond as a box, and the district attorney, you guys are the defendant, the plaintiff is the district attorney, and so the development authority has to defend that stuff, any item, to the district attorney, and if successful, the judge allows it to go in the box. There are some times, however, like the judge said, I don't know whether it was usufruct or one of those items, and the judge stopped the attorneys from arguing and said that Mickey Williams has said it best, and that was the state needs to clarify. So sometimes things aren't clarified, and they get in there. The other thing that happened in that bond hearing, and it may, is that the judge said to the attorney representing the district attorney, he asked him if he was asleep, because he looked like he was asleep. Well, he wasn't asleep. He said that he doesn't know anything about bonds. You know, so that could happen too. And I don't know if that happened in this one, because like the judge said at the beginning, that was the first time in his 30 years experience anybody had intervened. So maybe the district attorney wasn't careful about who he sent. But so it's not that things that are maybe illegal that go in there. They may become illegal later if the legislature changes things. But once they're in there, and once the judge says they can go in there, then the flaps are closed, tape is only put on one side, because 30 days, they have 30 days for somebody to challenge that thing. If not challenged, it's taped. And the reason that it's validated, I'm not going to use the word legal, is that you can't go back to it and question it, because that would disrupt the economy. What would happen if bonds were able to be challenged way back later and people have built things, et cetera, et cetera? That's from a layman's point of view.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Charlotte, you're our other public. You have any comment?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. All right then, and we do not have any executive session matters, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn for this authority.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, Cable Development Authority is adjourned. So, I will call to order the May 3rd meeting for the Development Authority of the City of Hapeville. And our roll call will reflect the same members present
Or
and absent. Our only item of business was approval of the minutes, just so would have those approved so that those could be released. And so, did anyone have any questions on
The date needs to be April 5th.
Right.
Not 5th. That's the only thing I
that? And there was
have.
one other thing, it stated,
The motion that carried was stated at 6-0, however,
it was
Mr.
prior to James's
Yes,
arrival.
yeah, so it should be 5-0.
5-0.
Anything else?
Motion to approve the minutes from the meeting with those changes.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor? And then, I'll just make a comment that as we consider the, Secretary Treasurer position for the Hapeville Development Authority, same thing would apply for Development Authority of the City of Hapeville, because those bylaws were basically copied over as well, as far as what would fit for a statutory authority. So we'll have that same.
I think it's a good idea to go ahead and go through those things, and even if there's no changes to be made, go ahead and adopt them as current date.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And probably every couple of years it needs to be done.
Yeah, that would eliminate confusion, because
Exactly.
15 years
And
later, who
maybe-
knows?
or
Maybe-
even somebody having to find a document that's 15 years old.
Maybe that's part of the, placed in the bylaws,
Yeah,
a
every-
period of time that have to be.
Review.
Maybe
at
just
least
do it at the
review.
annual meeting,
Well,
you
yeah, it
review the
wouldn't hurt to
bylaws.
review them every
No,
year.
no,
Maybe
Yeah,
at,
that-
maybe what,
at the
at
annual
our
meeting is
annual
good.
meeting, even if we just ratify the same set.
I mean, most,
Yeah.
you've
Bylaws.
got
You
people
can
on
add
here
that
for
to the
4
we
years,
can
so
add
you,
that as
you
we
know,
go through at the
it's
next
just a matter
meeting, we
of-
can add that to the bylaws.
Right. It could be part of that annual meeting that's described in the bylaws anyway,
Okay.
maybe.
That'll work.
Even if we have no changes, we at least
Still adopt them. at
adopt
that
them,
time.
and then, we have a current document that we're working from.
And the city has a current document.
Right. That's
So we
helpful,
don't
isn't it,
have to
Crystal?
dig up.
Crystal's like, thanks.
And there's only one version of the
Yes.
current document.
Yes. All right, so that was our only item of business. Any public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And we are adjourned.
So we're gonna get our,